Sometimes I feel like I've lived 10,000 lives in one, besties, and leaving corporate wasn't the hardest part. Leaving and shifting and transforming the identity was and is. I started working at 16, babysitting Popeyes, credit unions, corporate America. In the middle of working with the credit union, at one point I was taking 27 credit hours, leading student organizations, and becoming Rookie of the Year. What I didn't realize then, I was learning project management, I was learning community, I was learning creating. These same skills followed me into corporate America, where I helped brands add 6 to 8 figures, create 1,000 to 3,000% ROI consistently and scale. And yet, while I was managing and or creating millions for brands, my own money was a mess. So if this is your story and a mess in the middle, you and we get the chance to turn the mess to a message. And that's when the shift happened. I didn't just need to create wealth, I needed and got an opportunity to become a steward of it, a money manager. That nothing is ever wasted. Not the experiences, not the jobs, not the burnout, not the transformation, not the relationship, not the mistakes. We all win or learn. I always say I win or I learn, and so I'm always winning. Conor McGregor said that in his book. Faith doesn't look like certainty. It's like Martin Luther King said, it's seeing the first step in the staircase and taking that first next step. If you're questioning your next step, hear me when I say this. Your past is not a detour. It is a divine. Welcome to From Corporate to Creator, turning fear into faith when you leave the 9 to 5. Bestie, sometimes I feel like I've lived 10,000 lives in one. Does anyone else relate? And I'm starting here because leaving corporate wasn't necessarily the hardest part. I'll share more on that soon. Leaving the identity was. This episode isn't about quitting a job. It's about fear. It's about faith. It's about identity. It's about becoming. It's about embodiment. Especially when the life you create that you've created no longer fits who you're becoming or who you desire to become. So comment, leave a review, let me know on Instagram if you relate and if you want more episodes like this. So what favorite corporate girly really means. When I say corporate girly, I don't mean anti-corporate. When I talk about creator bestie or shifting from corporate to calling, I don't mean burn bridges. I gave a month notice when I left with an option of a 3-month notice. I don't mean I hated my job. I actually really liked my job and liked who I worked with, and I had a lot of respect, a lot of results. Corporate and college and the past gave me skills, gave me practice, gave me standards, gave me discipline. And in fact, how I look backward now as the version of me now in 2026 versus 2011 when I left, I would have done a lot of things differently. I'll share an Instagram carousel that I did in the show notes on what I would do different if I was leaving corporate in 2026, and I'll cover that in an upcoming episode. It taught me my worth was tied to output. Growing up in a culture, in a community, in a household where a lot of times, we were looked at as in status, as in position. Identity was tied to a title. What corporate role, what corporate executive role do you hold? My safety, my security was tied to a paycheck. It was like my nervous system, my reticular activating system, my neural pathways were programmed into this. And when you leave that type of pattern, that type of performance, that type of system, the question becomes, whether you realize it or not, who am I without this? And how am I going to function without this? Lives in one. Let's talk about this, besties. My first job was babysitting. I remember I babysat so many different kids when I lived in this complex in Houston, Texas called Belvedere. And sometimes I would bring my brother, which they didn't care, and we would play Nintendo. Any Super Mario lovers out there? So that was my first quote unquote jobs. Then my first official W-2 job was at Popeyes. Yes, your girl fried chicken, which I applied for. It was a brand new Popeyes on Highway 6 in Houston, Texas, and I applied for and met with the manager. One of the managers was Nathan. I distinctly remember. He was an ass. The other one I think was David, but I could be off on his name. But Nathan, I definitely remember. And I applied 3 weeks before I turned 16, and I already had the job in the bag. And what's interesting is I quit after 3 weeks. Why? Because I was tired of wearing Dickies every day and coming home smelling like fried chicken. I gained 10 pounds in less than 3 weeks from dipping fried chicken fingers or the long nuggets into either red beans and rice or mashed potatoes. And then also seeing like how at least the staff at the time, at least, the experience I had, would throw stuff on the floor and then still use it. And I was traumatized and wouldn't touch Popeyes for over 5 years after that, even though I loved the red beans and rice. And I still do. Like, that's one of my, like I haven't been in the U.S. Well, I was in the U.S. actually last year during July, for extravaganza, but I didn't go to Popeyes then. But it still was something I would occasionally do, and I don't even really consider it a cheat because it's like red beans and rice. I mean, come on. So after Popeyes, I also worked at IHOP. Lasted there a little bit longer, but not much, when they tried to force me to work on Christmas, and I actually ended up also throwing up. I think it was either Christmas Day and as a hostess and or New Year's Day or whatnot. I was like, this is not for me. This will not be my life. No judgment against any of the lovely people that have worked there or work there. But I realized early on, as I tried on these experiences, as I tried on these identities, that this was not for me. I ended up the same day, I distinctly remember, I ended up getting a job at a credit union and stayed there all through undergrad and grad school. And literally like a week after I got that job offer, which was on my dad's birthday, January 21st, I ended up finally getting a call from Continental, at United now, but at the time it was Continental Airlines. And I'm like, dang it, I should have, could have, would have, should have said yes to both, possibly. But, when I was in undergrad and grad school, there wasn't really so much of a thing as remote work. So I worked at a credit union all through undergrad and grad school. I started full-time, and I was going to school at night. And my manager at the time, Lana, which was amazing, was willing to work with my schedule and let me basically have a more flexible schedule, both with school and with undergrad and with the credit union. And so I was hitting 40 hours a week at the time. But then when I got promoted into financial services, I initially was full-time at the Spring Branch location in Houston. But then when I transitioned and was transitioning to the A-Leaf location, I was also full-time. And I proved myself through results. I proved myself through different things, and quickly, because I wanted the full college experience. So I put together a proposal, I showed them my numbers, and I committed that even with working 3 days a week, I was going to still pull in full-time numbers. What ended up happening, you guys, is I got Rookie of the Year. I got Best of the Best. I was pulling in numbers and results from relationships that I had that were higher than some people that worked 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and I was working less than 25 hours a week. Because once I made that transition, and at my peak or at my highest load, I would say, that I was doing that at the credit union. I was taking 27 credit hours in grad school, 18 hours in person, 9 hours by correspondence that I had a year to finish, but I finished in less than 6 months. At the same time, I was president of Millennium Models, that's still in existence at Sam Houston State University, vice president of Program Council, secretary of student government, and holding a 3.7 GPA. So at the time, I felt like I was thriving. It's literally like a blueprint for the multi-passionate entrepreneur, for the creator before the creator existed. But now I see it so clearly. It was project management. It was my natural state. It was me thriving what I love to do. I love to create. I love community. I love to learn. It was capacity creating. It was systems generating. These exact skills and this foundation and this proof that I could hold all of this, that I could create this, followed me into corporate America, followed me into NBC Apprentice, and project managing a project with Sony, which I'll share more about in another episode, followed me into Victoria's Secret, and went on to work in strategy, finance, marketing, and operations from startups to Fortune 500 companies. I'll also share more about Victoria's Secret in depth in another episode. As a chief audit executive, for example, I helped add 8 figures to the bottom line within less than a year for the parent company and the 3 subsidiaries. I created at the time what I called my top 10 framework, or my top 10 goals, that essentially I put together a roadmap, and I created the first 100 days, just like the president of the United States does, to put together his plan or her plan. And I aligned top accounts like income, accounts receivable, accounts payable, fixed assets, operations. And what I did is as I divinely dug in and put in the work, I would dig into the accounts to look for fraud, waste, and abuse, and find where there was money potential to be gained back and opportunity to add back to the bottom line. So for example, in the income account, I discovered huge issues with contracting and accounts receivable. So income, huge issues with contracting where when the sales team would negotiate, they were leaving stuff off left and right. So essentially, the company was giving things away to the oil and gas companies that we did maintenance for. And then, so just from the opportunities of what we had left off for negotiation, that added $25 million to the bottom line that year. Then in comparison on the accounts receivable, and I worked with, the contract team, I worked with the sales team, I worked with the legal team, I worked with the customers. In fact, they ended up offering me to go become the contract VP. And I was like, nope, I'm not leaving Atlanta. I want to stay in Atlanta at the time because I knew that full-time entrepreneurship was in my path. In comparison, in accounts receivable, the DSO, or day sales outstanding, was super high. It was like 90 days. That meant that from the time that an invoice was issued, we were not paid on average until 90 days later. Well, in the meantime, you have, payroll, you have vendors to pay, you have, basic operational costs. So then I worked with the team to negotiate more favorable terms, negotiate cash paid within less than 10 days and discounts. We decreased the day sales outstanding to less than 15 days and improved system issues as well. Another example was as a Victoria's Secret director in less than 6 months, as leading the team as director and with the team, we added $1.2 million to the bottom line in less than 6 months. How did we do that? We paid attention to sales from the front of the store to the back of the store, also preventing theft from an external standpoint, and the store had a shrink rate meaning theft, of 50%. And if you know anything about retail, typically, overwhelmingly, that percentage is led to internal theft. And that included firing 20 people in less than a month for basic stuff, you guys, people not showing up for their shift, me catching a guy, Chris, I mean, that's such a common name. And if you're listening, sorry, Chris, not sorry. Catching a guy coming back from his break high, that he had literally gone on break, gotten high, and was literally like high on his shift. And the ROI was real in all these examples. And I have so many more. So, like, the show is definitely taking a shift. 1,000 to 3,000% returns on investment were normal. And here's the part I didn't want to face at the time. And this is the part that I've gotten the opportunity to take 100% responsibility over the last several years and completely step into a new identity. While I was helping brands manage millions, while I was helping brands reach 6 to 8 plus figures, my own money was a mess. As my own income increased, so did my spending beyond what I was earning, what I was receiving, my lifestyle, my debt. I managed the corporate finances with precision as a CPA, now an active, but I didn't steward my own money, my own management, the investment, the scaling with the same care. And that gap forced a reckoning. The emotions I tried to bury, the stories from childhood, the inner child work, that's where the identity shift started to massively happen. I didn't realize I didn't just need to create wealth. I was given an opportunity, we're given an opportunity to manage it, to be a steward. I created in 2016 what I call the 6-pack of wealth: creating, giving, saving, investing, leveraging, and spending. Definitely check out my binge-worthy series on that and the free webinar on how to make and manage money like a boss, and the 6-pack of wealth that you can find at fitlifecreation.com/freebies. And the full course on the moneymaker is included in the Creator School. And this is where faith and finance started to meet. Nothing was wasted, not the experiences in babysitting, not Popeyes, not IHOP, not working at a doctor's office in high school, not college, not the credit union, not corporate America, not the AICPA, not the wins. That's one of my affirmations on my phone. Not the wins, not the mess, not the mistakes, not the winning, the learning. It's all training. So the 3 triggers that aligned my exit from corporate, it included 3 specific things: prayer, vision, and aligned results. So it wasn't impulsive at all, even though I say if I was leaving corporate America right now, I would be leaving in a very different avenue. But again, I'm a different Katrina. I'm a different version. So I prayed and I released it, and I prayed, like, please show me 3 signs if I'm to leave now or if I'm to leave soon, in that year. The time was 2011, and it seems like both yesterday and a lifetime ago. So I got a response for an ongoing tech opportunity. I got a response for a business plan, also paid, for a geoponics resort in Arizona, which was fascinating. I've been creating business plans since 2006 with Life Plan. And then I also submitted to teach as an adjunct professor at Georgia State University. So I thought you had to have a PhD. However, my intern at the time, Stephanie, shout out to Stephanie, let me know that no, like, you could apply with an undergrad and a graduate degree. So with those 3 responses, I took the steps to put together the notice to the CEO and the CFO, who were my bosses at the time. And I received the most flattering replies. The CEO told me that he thought I was going to be his next COO. And I told him, I said, well, if that's the case, then I didn't do a great job of letting you know who I truly am and what I desire. And I left on great terms. I gave them an option for a month notice, which timed perfectly and divinely to my mission trip that I was taking with a sports camp in Austria at the time in early July, or that I would go on the mission trip, come back for another month to 2 months, and time it to August. So I left on great terms. And when I was listening to the Instagram summit with ManyChat earlier this year, Rich BFFs shared something that really hit me. Use your 9 to 5 to fund your 5 to 9. And I posted a reel where I shared like myself shaking my head at her talking about this, because I'm like, oh my God, like Katrina, 10 plus years ago, like I wish she would have gotten this. But it goes back to so many of the habits and the identity I had at the time, and for years, for decades, of rushing, of not believing I was worthy, of instability, of so many things. And the other thing that Rich BFF talked about, Vivian too, is save at least $100,000 before leaving. Another mic drop. Yes, I had 401k at the time, but that combined with the Katrina that, overspent, that didn't save, that, had so many blind spots in finances, so many money messes to a message, didn't steward that 401k well. And I remember thinking when I heard her talk, why didn't I know this internally back then? Why didn't I believe I was worthy? And of course, I heard variations of this at the time. My mom was in my ear. And also, what's interesting, if I had stayed just 7 more months, because 7 months later, the parent company dissolved and was bought out, I would have received a compensation package of $50,000 to $75,000. Because I still kept in touch with people that worked there, so I knew. And let's be honest, let's be real. The Katrina I was in, I probably would have blown through it in under 2 years, and it wouldn't have been in necessarily alignment, embodiment, or investment. And oftentimes we choose, or we get to experience pain because blind spots that we have, and then we get to choose, and I'm a firm believer of this, we get to choose pain to purpose, to serve people. And I believe that nothing is ever wasted if we choose to adopt that mindset. So faith isn't necessarily clarity always. It isn't confidence, or like I like to say, Godfidence. It's posting before applause. It's creating before results, or looking for the result of the one like, the one email sign up, the one follower. Trusting the assignment, not the algorithm. That I'm not behind, I'm becoming, that I'm a work in process. If you are in the messy middle, you are in the right place, bestie. In the next episode, I'm going to be talking about your body being a part of your business, and how self-hate turned into love, self-love for me, into self-trust for me. This is the diary of a creator, and nothing in your story is ever wasted. So let me know, out of what I've shared in this episode, what comes up for you. Are you in corporate now and also in the middle of a side hustle? And side note, I had side hustles before it was even a hashtag. Are you a corporate girly? Does the story of the 10,000 lives in one, which I only shared the tip of the iceberg with you, the money mess to a message, the getting results for them, they're worthy, I'm not worthy, is that bringing up something for you? The answers or responses to the prayer I had about leaving, the wisdom from what Rich BFF shared, the faith as action. So what's coming up for you? And then what else out of this episode would you maybe like me to dig deeper into? So leave a review on the show so I can shout you out, and drop your IG handle and or your website. And as always, remember, besties, create, transform, and inspire, because you are born to.